So, welcome this morning to our conversation with Zach Abramowitz. Zach is going to be our speaker at the annual meeting in Charlotte, and he is going to talk with us Friday at 11:35 about what lawyers are getting right and wrong about AI. This is going to qualify for 1 hour of technology training credit, so yay. Zach, you have one of the least boring resumes I've ever read in legal tech. You were a lawyer, a startup founder, a stand-up comedian, an ESP radio announcer, and now Killer Whale Strategies. How did all of that turn into helping lawyers make sense of AI?
Yeah, for sure. An eclectic resume. And then actually, when I was working at ESPN Radio as an intern then for Max Kellerman and Stephen A. Smith, the big broadcasters today, I was actually in law school while doing that. But I had also been, as you mentioned before, a professional stand-up comedian. I worked for 2 years, my senior year in college and the year afterwards. And I think that what those added to my legal career as well as my startup career, because I practiced for a few years before leaving to start a startup. But that first part of it, whether it was radio or stand-up comedy, even spent some time as a high school teacher, was helping me with developing real content skills. And I think that when any time something new and disruptive emerges, there are several things that you need to do. First, it's just to basically understand what the thing is, right? What is this new thing, and be able to wrap your head around it and explain it to everyone. When I give AI sessions, I frequently tell people I want you to go home and I want you to explain how AI works to your spouse, to your kids, to your siblings, whoever it is, not just in a technical context. So I think that's really very critical. But beyond understanding the new thing, then there's acting on it, and there's the strategy side of things. There's figuring out what are we going to need to do with this as a business. And then finally, and I think here's where the content piece really comes into play, is then figuring out what am I going to need to tell my people. Now, my people might be the lawyers in my firm, it might be our clients, it might be the broader ecosystem, but you're always going to have the job not just of, again, understanding the new thing and acting upon it, but then going and explaining to people, here's why we're going to have to make really significant changes. So I think my career, I had several years where I was practicing as an attorney, and that was really critical, especially for understanding the customers who I'm working with today, whether that's a law firm, a legal department, a legal service provider, but understanding really what it is that lawyers do and what's really important to them, like what makes them tick. The tech portion of my career, when I was left to start a startup, really gave me a hands-on experience, not just with like building technology, but also deploying it, like making it work, understanding like what goes into that. But I do think the content piece has been like a kind of critical third pillar to what it is we do as a company and what makes me good at what I do.
So, speaking of your company, I have to ask the name Killer Whale Strategies. What do killer whales know about innovation that lawyers could stand to learn?
I think if you think about the traditional, spirit animal of the legal community, I think most lawyers would say that they're compared most often to sharks. And the shark is fast and it's vicious. And I get the comparison, especially for people who are litigators, who are highly competitive, love to win arguments. But the shark is hunting today the same way it was at the dawn of history. There's not been a huge amount of change in what sharks do, and sharks are not collaborative hunters, they hunt alone. Killer whales, by comparison, are the only animal in the animal kingdom that we know of that constantly iterates on its hunting methods, not necessarily out of need, because they're very efficient hunters. So this isn't like they've been forced to abandon certain types of waters and go somewhere else. So now they need to develop a plan. What the killer whale does is actually constantly try to improve its own method. And it takes huge risks. There's a group of killer whales off the coast of Patagonia, as an example, that have taught themselves how to breach onto the beach and actually take seals right off the sand. And I think that's a great analogy for innovation with lawyers. lawyers are going to have to change the ways that they hunt, and they should want to iterate, not just because they have to, but they should be looking, I think, to iterate because it leads to better performance. A killer whale spends around 95% of its time playing and only 5% of its time hunting. I'm sure there are plenty of lawyers out there who like that mix in their own life.
Yeah, life goals. So I think a lot of lawyers have tried AI probably a couple of years ago, got weird answers, saw hallucinations, didn't agree with it, and decided, nah, this isn't for me. What do you say to the one and done crowd?
So I think what we're seeing right now is a lot of the one and done crowd has been curious enough to at least ask the question about what did I get wrong the first time? Because I tried it and it wasn't great. I think very often it comes down to the use case. And I think there are things that AI looks like it's really good at doing, even if it might not be great at it, at least out of the box. So a great example is contract drafting. Yes, if you ask AI, draft me a contract, it's going to draft you something that looks really like a contract, but very often it's going to be missing things that you think are critical as an attorney. And you will then come to the kind of conclusion that, like, it's not really good at this. It's just making stuff up. So I think a lot of it is thinking in a more sophisticated way about use cases. And the way I like to put that is, quote, Mark Cuban talks about this. He says there are people who want AI to do everything for them so that they have to learn nothing. He says there are other people who want to use AI because it now enables them to learn anything. I think trying just to get AI to just do your work for you, very often lawyers will come up short. But I know that many lawyers have to learn about new concepts all the time. There are certain lawyers for whom their practice is more like shooting free throws, where it's just about reps and they're really doing the same thing every single day. And this analogy or this framing may not work as much for them. But for lawyers who are having to learn about different types of clients or different laws or different statutes, having someone there to help you learn those things in a way that makes sense and is tailored entirely for you is to me a major cheat code. So I think for a lot of lawyers, it's having the right framing on how to use AI beyond just I draft my memo.
Yep. And also, there's so much low-hanging fruit that I'm constantly setting agents off to do my bidding while I do real work. And it's stuff that I don't want to mess around with, moving a form in Word into a real form. Things like that. I just set it and let it go on and do its thing in the background. So yeah, lots and lots of different ways to leverage this technology. But if- to your point, we hear a lot about hallucinations and confidentiality and whether we can trust AI because you ask it to write a brief and you go, that's malpractice. So lawyers are right to be cautious, or maybe we're worrying about the wrong things.
So I think that lawyers are right to be cautious. And I think that hallucinations are a very, very real part of AI. And as I'm going to discuss at the annual meeting, hallucinations are not just a glitch in AI. They are AI's secret sauce. The reason AI is able to do as much as it does and be as creative as it does is because, very much like a human, it hallucinates, right? And that's the kind of the thing about AI is that we all wanted AI to be able to process and understand human language and content and unstructured data, which it can do. But the thing is, we wanted it to be a little bit more like a calculator, where 2 plus 2 is 4 100% of the time. And with AI, 2 plus 2 is 4 99.99% of the time. But that, I think, that frustration that, oh, you're like a human, but like a little bit too much, I think is the key. I think that once you understand how it is that AI works, you bake in hallucinations as part of your understanding of the AI, the same way you would as if you were having a conversation with another person and they might mention some really interesting fact or study. And you might say to them, wait a second, where does that study come from? I want to see that data point. Or if you're a kind of curious, skeptical person, as many lawyers are, you might go afterwards and say, someone mentioned a study, but I haven't seen any study on it. I'm going to go look into that. So I think we've done that with people. We've understood. It's just that forever our computers, our devices were things that we could trust with 100% certainty. So now having something that's machine that I have to trust more like I trust a human, it's just a lot. It's a lot to wrap your head around.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I hear this. If a lawyer is secretly wondering, is everyone else already way ahead of me on AI? What would you say to them?
Okay, so first of all, the good news is that a lot of people are secretly wondering, are they behind on AI? And the other good news is a lot of people are not so secretly wondering. So one of those people was Andrej Karpathy, who was recently hired by Anthropic, but was one of the key innovators at Tesla on full self-driving. He was then at OpenAI. And he recently, earlier this year, put out a post explaining that he felt dramatically behind on AI. Everyone feels behind because it's really fast moving. The reason it's moving as fast as is because kind of two things happened at once, which was first, we had models that could understand unstructured data and language. And then because that was true, it also meant that any human could now communicate with an intelligence system. And the barriers of language, whether that's legal language or computer code, have just completely dropped. And as a result, we are seeing innovation at a pace that's hard to remember and maybe unprecedented. So everyone feels behind. What I say is the best thing you can do is if you are chasing a speeding locomotive, be a little bit more like Superman. So, in a certain sense, AI is both the problem here because it's making people feel like they're dramatically behind, but AI is the also the thing that can help you catch up because one of the things that AI is great at teaching you about is AI. So I think that it's a very common sentiment, and I think the worst thing that you can do is continue to bury your head in the sand. The good news is that once you let yourself be what a managing partner recently described to me as AI pilled, then I think that things start moving very fast. And it's like those first 3 days before you want to go on a diet. You're thinking, oh, this is just going to be terrible. But 3 days later, as you're into it, you've been sticking with your plan, immediately you start feeling better. And I think that's the key. So at the session itself, one of my main goals will be for people who feel like they were behind to come out feeling like not only do I no longer feel behind, but I think I even have a plan for keeping up with this as it moves forward. I'm really looking forward to the session.
I can't wait to see you, and I hope everybody comes and joins us at annual meeting at 11:35 on Friday for what lawyers are getting right and wrong about AI with Zach. And thank you so much for your time today, and look forward to seeing you very soon.
Thanks, Catherine.